Good afternoon or good morning, and thank you so much for joining us for the SCIP virtual event series. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's program, using third parties to support competitive intelligence activities. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michelle Winter, and I am the Director of Education Programming here at SCIP, and I'll be moderating the program today. I just want to go through some what I like to call technical housekeeping. Just take a few seconds just to make sure that your experience today here is maximized. First and foremost, this is a live webinar and your computer will show the presentation and stream the live audio. So please ensure that your computer audio is on. All participants will be muted during the duration of the program. There is a Q&A function that will be active during the presentation that enables you to type your questions in for me, the moderator, and questions will be asked and answered as time permits. Those we don't get to will be addressed at a later date and sent out to all of the attendees. And last but not least, the most important thing is we don't foresee technical issues. However, sometimes internet programs are subject to them. And should this happen, we will contact you regarding rescheduling this program. Today, we are thrilled to have Erik Glitman, the CEO of Fletcher CSI, as our facilitator. And with that, Erik, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle. It's always a pleasure to be able to work with the SCIP community and share information and insights about the practice and art of competitive intelligence. As Michelle said, today we're going to talk about how third parties come into play in support of competitive intelligence operations and activities. A lot of this is going to be intended for use by people who are on the corporate side, or what we in the CI vendor side call the client side, to help you understand or apply some tools and tricks about when and how to use third parties to help you support your competitive activities. So to start us into this, get myself into the right paper on the page here. Want to tell you what we're going to cover here. First off, a little quick overview. I then want to talk about a concept that is, I think, very important to understanding not just use of third parties, but overall competitive intelligence, which is the highest and best use. We'll talk about some of the common things you'll find that are outsourced, why those tend to be outsourced as opposed to being done in-house. Also want to go into some things about what you might expect from a third-party partner. What are they like? What are they going to do for you? And then some stages and activities around bringing that third-party partner into your operation to be more efficient. And finally, sort of, what does it take? What should you be looking at when you're coming to select that third-party partner? So these are the things we'll cover today. As Michelle said, if you have questions, please text them in on the chat box there, and she will relay those to us at the end of the session here. So let's start with an overview. The reason we're bringing up third-party partners is because competitive intelligence, to be done effectively, it's really very difficult to do it without the support of outside entities. These are all types of groups, but what we find is a lot of companies that don't use third parties tend to rely very heavily upon secondary data sources. Those are the databases that you get, the Google searches, the multi-client reports or syndicated reports that come out. And it's important to note that in competitive intelligence, one of the hallmarks of unique competitive intelligence is that you have information that others don't have access to, which allows you to provide better analysis. And as it is right now, anybody who has an internet connection, which I think encompasses pretty much anybody who works in the corporate world, has access to all the secondary databases. And if you're willing to spend to purchase some of the subscription databases, you have access to those as well. So it really does come down to the data sets are relatively common. At the same time, though, there is a fairly time-intensive activity that has to happen once you've collected the data, which is the sorting and the analyzing of putting that data into something meaningful that you're going to do. When you outsource parts of the competitive intelligence function, whether it's data gathering, whether it's data analysis, sorting, filtering, or even developing presentations and reports. What it does is it effectively takes your CI professional job, the one you have in your corporate world, and multiplies the resources you have, the number of people and the number of tools that you have access to by doing it. So the benefits you get almost immediately, as you can see, is extra resources coming to you. We'll talk more about that as we go on. You should also understand the priorities. You want to make sure when we're doing this that your partners understand what is important to you and to the task that you have assigned to them. Why is it being done? How is it going to be used? What are the outcomes from it? And if you have a multiple priority list, which are at the top, which are at the bottom, and how do you get there? Typically, with a good third-party partner, you're working in tandem with you. They are, in some ways, almost the same thing as someone who works down the hallway from you or is on your Microsoft Teams list just as any other employee of the company is. But they're going to enhance what you can do in-house with these third-party resources. Using a third party requires an element of trust. Actually, it requires quite a lot of trust. And we'll talk more about some of those components of trust that you have to be aware of. But keep that in mind, that if you don't trust your partner, not much good is going to come from using a third-party source. I want to also talk about the differentiation between third-party providers. Most of us recognize that even in an organization such as SCIP, especially in organizations such as SCIP, there are dozens, perhaps even hundreds of different providers of competitive insights and competitive intelligence support. So picking between those is a challenge. The differentiation between secondary providers or between primary providers may not be as great as you think, but it can be significant, and it's important to understand how you evaluate those differentiations. In sum, though, bringing in that third-party provider does something that you can't do in-house. It leverages your resources. It makes it easier for you to complete multiple tasks to cover across a broader range of topics and interests and needs, and to provide more insightful results, better recommendations for action, better analysis than what might be done by yourself, acting alone, or by a small department that's in there. If you want to conduct effective CI, it becomes almost essential that at several stages in the process, you will need to bring in a third party. So when we bring in that third party, we want to make sure we bring in the right one. Secondary research has a lot of benefits. That's the desk research. Most people who are in competitive intelligence already know about it, and they do it. It's very easy to get. You can get it with an internet connection. Most of the time, this is done in-house. Virtually all of our clients have secondary data collection capabilities. They might have even a secondary data specialist on their team who is going to be collecting that information. Much of what you need on secondary data is available for free. Even those subscription databases that are out there tend to use as their source data information that is available for free or for very low cost. The benefit they bring, they aggregate that into one location. They provide search and filtering capabilities that make it easier for you to find that information as opposed to a complex search string that you might have to use in-house. There are some that need subscriptions, and those can be very useful as a time saver. The nice thing about that secondary data collection, it's a relatively fast process. If you have two projects and one requires primary and the other requires secondary, almost every time that secondary data collection process will go faster. And with a lot of tools that are now available through third-party providers, you can even automate that data collection, give you a daily update, a weekly update, all kinds of things. You can use a Google Alerts as a cheap and easy one, or you can go to a more complex one where you engage in a third-party provider who has that kind of search capability and sorting capabilities. At the same time, because there is so much data available on secondary sources, going through that process, going through a Google search or a DuckDuckGo search or any other online search produces thousands of results. And you've got to decide which ones are relevant and which ones aren't. Certainly there's some filtering you can do that'll narrow down your universe of data sets, but you still have a lot to come up with. That's a lot of time that may be better spent on something else. Also, key thing about secondary data is that it's data that has already been published. Other people already know about it. The decision makers have already completed the decision. There may be some out there where people are speculating about the future, which is speculation, and they may even be very accurate on their speculation, but it's still something that's been said to everybody who's listening, which means there's no unique competitive advantage in having that. And some subscription databases run in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to get, particularly if you're looking at a corporate license for some of those. So there's a significant cost in doing that. In comparison, when we look at partnering, we get some significant other benefits that come out. The piece about partnering, over and beyond the secondary data component of it, is it takes your in-house resources, enhances that with the qualified third-party partners that you have, and creates for you greater capacity, better capabilities, a more efficient delivery of services, and a more enhanced value overall. Plus, the key part, as I mentioned earlier, it multiplies you from one person to many that are related through that contract. And we'll talk more about that as we go along. Some other things that you should consider when looking for a competitive intelligence partner, regardless of primary or secondary, consider what are your CI priorities and make sure that your partners understand those priorities and are working with you in concert to make sure that what you get is what you actually need. Remember, this is a trust-based process. If you are not trustworthy if your partner is not trustworthy to you, if you don't think they're putting your needs above others, if you don't think they're keeping your information confidential or secure, if you don't think they're delivering everything that's out there, you will find that this is not a good relationship. As I said earlier, providers are relatively similar in many ways within a singular area. So quantifying one as being better than the other is hard to do. Qualitatively, there are many differences, and we'll talk about how to bring them in there. So keep in mind that when you do bring in this partner, though, once you trust them, you've identified that they are the kind of partner you want to work with, you will be more efficient at your job, delivering more meaningful results to your internal stakeholders, and as a consequence, being able to have greater impact on the outcomes and developments in your company. So that's sort of a quick overview of why we're bringing in these partners and some of the things we're looking at. I want to talk about the first part, which is your internal operations. And I'm going to use a concept called highest and best use. For those of you who are not familiar with this concept, it literally comes out of urban planning and taxation policies. In most of the US, I'll give you an example of how this works. In most of the US, towns are zoned according to particular activities and things that can happen on them. I live in Vermont. We're a very rural state, so much of my town happens to be rated as forestry and agriculture. That's the most thing that you can do on those sites. If you are in a zone called forestry, you can grow a forest, nothing else. If you're in a zone called residential, you can put a house up there. Some of them are 1 acre, some are 10, some are a half acre. Whatever that zone allows you to do is the most that you can do on that town. If you are in a zone that's zoned as commercial, you can do forestry, agriculture, residential, or commercial. The way that highest and best use works is that when the tax assessor looks at this, They look at what you can do with your property, not what you are doing with your property. So the highest and best use for a commercial plot of land is commercial. And it may be forestry right now because that's all the owner is doing. But because that land has the potential to do something more, it's taxed accordingly. The application of this to competitive intelligence is very similar. There are lots of things that you as a competitive intelligence professional can do. You may not be doing the most important thing for your business. In other words, you may not be doing what is the highest and best use of competitive intelligence. So I want to talk a little bit more about how we identify what is the highest and best use. And there are really 4 elements to it. We'll go into those in more detail in just a few seconds. First step of this is you have to understand and be aware that there is a highest and best use for competitive intelligence. Understand what that is. How do you get there? Start by talking to your stakeholders. What is it that they most want? Follow that up by knowing who your partners are. What is it they can do? And then finally, choosing partners based upon what they can do and their qualifications. So let's focus on the first step of that. Every function in your company has what is its best use, its highest use. Your accounting team, for example, is best used for managing the company's books. If you started using them to do, say, third-party data collection on competitors' operations, they might not be very good at it. They might do it, but it wouldn't be the best use for it. The same is true within competitive intelligence. Keep in mind, though, the highest and best use for your particular company may not be the same one as other companies. The highest and best use that your company wants is the one that adds the most value to your company itself from that CI operation. So before you even start to look at a third-party partner, you need to understand what is the best thing that your CI unit can do. And this is important because once you know what it is that your unit is best valued for, the greatest value you deliver, this will help you to understand what you should keep in-house and what should be outsourced. Ideally, as we go through this process and you identify the highest and best use for your organization, you will understand that that's what you need to put most of your time and effort into, supporting that particular function. How do we do that? Find the stakeholders, ask them about competitive intelligence, and find out what information do they get that they share around the organization because it's important and they want people to know about it. What's the information that you're delivering or that they see from their own competitive scanning that they study? They spend time trying to understand it, trying to make sense of how it affects the business, and they use it to drive decisions. What's the stuff they scan? Do they just scan the daily news feed and ignore 90% of it or just take note of it? When they do scan, what do they zip in and focus on and pay attention to? And what's the parts they just skip over altogether? Start this by looking at what you're currently delivering to your stakeholders and understand from them which of those 4 apply to the various products you deliver to them. Understand also that what you most like to do, what's easiest for your CI unit to do, may not be what is the highest valued thing that your CI unit does. It is the one thing you should do more of. We've had plenty of examples where we have seen CI departments that have done absolutely fantastic jobs at doing things like putting out newsletters or delivering flash news briefs, only to find out that that's really not something that stakeholders want. Stakeholders want longer, more strategic studies of where they should be going, and they expect the CI unit to be looking far forward. That's a different use of their functions. Likewise, we have clients where they are always strategic and far forward thinking, but their clients want a daily news feed. Highest and best use in both of those cases is not what they most like to do. If it's not the highest and best use and it's something that you do, It should be prioritized based upon stakeholder needs and, as appropriate, sent out to third parties to allow you to continue to focus on what is the highest and best use of your department and where you come in there. Some stakeholder needs may take priority over others. And the priority needs of those stakeholders may not be necessarily the top, highest, and best use for the company as a whole. But because that stakeholder has a high priority, for example, that could be, say, a CEO, you kind of need to pay attention to that because that's the way your business, your operation stays in function. So understand what is the highest and best use of CI in your organization. Focus your internal resources towards managing and meeting that highest and best use, and start looking for other resources to offload so that you can put more of your time and energy into what matters the most. When you use a third-party partner, they are not really ideally suited to be the deliverer of your highest and best use. They are a great support for that, but they should not be the source of it. That needs to stay in-house. But when we have tasks that are important to stakeholders, are somewhere further down the priority list, want to bring in a third-party vendor to handle it. Now, here again, the principle of highest and best use applies. You want to understand for your partners, what is it that their skill set uniquely allows them to do? What is the skill set you need? How does it fit and match with the skill sets they can deliver? It may be necessary to have several partners working together, either aware of each other or independent of each other, to deliver what is needed to support these other uses and applications. But for each partner, understand what their unique skill set is and how you can use them in the highest and best use application. An example is if you have a company that is extremely good at doing, say, trade show data collection, but they're really not very good at secondary. They may be okay. Focus on what their strength is and play to that strength. Bring them in for that function and find another partner for other functions. I know it sounds kind of strange to hear somebody who is a vendor of competitive intelligence sources telling you use different partners for different resources. It is in your best interest to have the best partners working for you. And it is in your partner's best interest to make sure they are delivering their best services to you. Both sides come out much happier for it. Remember, the purpose of that third party is to free you up to focus on what is your highest and best application within the company, the things that your company values the most of all of it. See them as a way to extend your service range so that on those products or services that your internal clients want, you are leveraging what your partners do best to allow you to deliver something best for it. So what do we outsource? What do we see most often? Pretty much everything that a CI unit can do is outsourced. Everything from research support, getting someone who can do secondary data scraping or social media monitoring, producing newsletters, or primary data collection, win-loss, voice of customers, competitive deep dives, deep investigations, operational support when you need a facilitator for an event, or a specific subject matter expert who can come in and talk about a very narrow focused project you have. We see a lot of outsourcing being used for data platforms, technology type support capabilities, things that it doesn't make sense for your organization to buy or develop in-house. Most companies aren't going to develop an internal AI platform. There are plenty of third-party vendors who have those. Leverage that kind of a piece that comes out of there. And sometimes even it's administrative support. If you've got multiple contract vendors, you may want to outsource the project management to a third party in order to get their weight to facilitate you on that. And this is done for all kinds of different reasons. A lot of times, secondary research is outsourced because it's time consuming for some. There's specific subject matter expertise that some companies have They're very good. They've developed really good platforms to filter and sort out information and not deliver information overload for you. Makes your job easier. They have access to multiple databases, so you don't have to buy 10 different databases because that provider already has those. Primary research, a lot of that times that's outsourced because it's very difficult for a company employee to pick up the phone and have a phone call with the employee of a competitor, or to go to a trade show and walk into a competitor's booth and talk to them, or talk to competitor supply chains without tipping the hand of your company that you are interested in certain aspects of the competitor's operation. Other activities, because there's outside expertise that you need and how it comes in. So when we're doing that, we need to start selecting our partners. We came up with a sort of a 4 C's of consulting that we developed a few years back on what you should be looking at in a competitor. They start out, 4 C's are competency, cost, culture, capacity. We look at the competency. Is the product or the service you're asking them to perform for you, is it within their core of competence? It may be adjacent and they may be okay at it. It's your company that's at stake. You don't want okay, to quote that ad, that you see along, okay is just okay. It's not good enough. You want someone who's expert at it. So do they have that competency? Competency can come in industry knowledge. It can come in skill set. It can come in connections. Understand which type of competency you need and make sure that what you're getting from the third-party partner is within that core competency. And that core competency needs to be the competency you need. There are many, many, many extremely competent third-party CI providers out there. If that competency is not in your needs window or in what you need, there's other ones out there. Look for tenure. A lot of companies can produce resumes of people they might talk to. There's a difference between a resume database and a tenure database. Understand that difference and how it affects whether or not this partner can give you what you want. Cost. If any of you have ever priced out competitive intelligence, you know that it's pretty easy for the pricing to be anything from, as I quote, a lot bigger than a breadbasket, smaller than a house. In some cases, the house is a multi-million-dollar mansion, depending on what you're looking at. The cost should be appropriate to your budget, and your budget should be set upon the value that this competitive intelligence will deliver to your organization. If you're about to make a $200 million decision, you might be comfortable spending more than $2,000 to get an answer. If you're looking at a $50,000 decision, you're probably going to find that a bill of $10,000 is excessive on it. Think about the return on investment you get. You want to put your money to its highest and best use, so get the maximum return you can. Remember, price is not really a measure of a partner's capabilities. It's more a measure of their cost structure and what they think the market can bear. We look at culture as another feature. Your company has a culture. It's a culture of how you operate, how you report, the kinds of things you have that are considered acceptable or they're used in the office space, whether you work from home, work in a home, or work in the office. And of course, today in COVID-19, most of us are working from home. But what is that culture? Is it a button-down hierarchical culture, or is it a loose, freewheeling kind of culture? Are they 24/7 charging on your projects? Or are they a little more laissez-faire? We're going to get it done. We know it's going to take us 3 weeks. We'll get it done in the 3 weeks. Don't worry about it. Do they focus on one industry, one topic, or are they a diverse partner? Those cultural features affect how you will interact with that partner. And if that culture doesn't match, even though you may like the individuals on a personal basis, the way you get feedback from them, the reports you get back, the way you interact with them will always feel uncomfortable. Look for someone whose culture approximates or fits in nicely with the culture of your company. And finally, capacity. Not all companies need huge resources to get things done. But periodically, you may have surge needs. Make sure that there's capacity there and that it will be there for as long as you need it. If the company is going to be signing up with you for a 3-year contract, you want to be certain that that capacity that they have to serve you today will still be there in 3 years, that they won't grow so fast that they don't have staff to do the work for you, or that they won't constantly shift through staff or deprioritize you. Your capacity needs from that partner will also evolve. So as they evolve, make sure your partner has the ability to increase or decrease their capacity to support your needs at the time. Be aware that some partners may use third-party contractors rather than employees. So instead of W-2 employees, they'll use 1099 contractors. That has a difference in how their capacity can go. It can go very rapidly up or down when you use contractors versus employees, but be aware of what that means for other aspects of how longevity affects institutional knowledge and continuity of service for you. So these are parts of really the 4 C's. And if your partner matches you on these, you have a good partner and you can move forward. Again, outsourcing is a force multiplier. A quick way to look at that is, as a CI staff member on your company, you may manage 3-4 partners with different functions around there. And each one of those partners may have 3-4 different employees working on the job. So one manager on your team can have effective, through partner relationships, management of 12, 15, 50 people without affecting your permanent personnel budget, but rather with affecting only your contracting budget. So it's a way to shift costs from operating costs to expenses, and that helps your management understand the budget for you, but it also allows you to get much more done with much less staff in there. So this is something to keep in mind as to why we use that. Fixed outsourced services really do allow your group to be more effective. And by fixed, that means sort of a long-term contract or a long-term relationship you have with a partner. Remember, your database provider, as I said earlier, may have access to many, many more databases as part of their bundle than what you can get on your own contracting basis. And that gives you the leverage of spending less, but getting more from it. Outsourced partners are not a fixed cost. It's important to remember this. If you have budget changes, budget cuts, you can vary how many you outsource versus not do at all. You can integrate multiple partners for various projects on an as-need basis. If you try to bring in those resources in-house, they become fixed year after year, and you may only need them for a short period of time. So look at these outsourced providers as exactly what they are: a source of expertise, force multiplier that allows you to do more without adding more staff to your own team. So what should you expect from a third-party partner? Now, it's not just getting the task completed. You've engaged a third-party partner to complete the task, and that is kind of a minimum measure of their competence. Can they get the job done on time, where it comes from? A partner who can't do that is not a good partner. It makes you look bad for having selected them. It hurts the process of development that you need to have done. All in all, it's just a mess. So do not pay attention or get involved with that third-party partner if they are not competent to deliver the reports the way you need them. Performance. It's not just that they get the report done. Did they meet your deadlines? If you have a project that's being done and your partner continually pushes back deadlines without a good reason for doing it, and certainly today with COVID-19, deadlines are going to get pushed back because resources are being reallocated, ways of doing business are changing. So in the short run, it's understandable. A Hurricane Katrina comes through where one of your partners is based, it's understandable they're not going to make the deadline. But on a routine basis, they should be able to make it. It's it is expected that your partners will produce product that is ready to go in front of your leadership. It shouldn't have grammar mistakes in it. Spelling should be correct. Paginations, everything should be ready to go wherever you want to distribute it. Even if you're only asking your partner to give you a data dump, that data dump should be clean and ready for you to integrate it into your final deliverable that comes out from there. They should also know the market. Your partners should understand the market you're in, how it functions, what drives that market, and be up to date on it. So they can give you some information and maybe regularly say, I've read about these activities. This seems relevant to our ongoing relationship, so I'd like to share it with you. And finally, responsive. There's nothing more frustrating than to have a third-party partner who doesn't respond to your inquiries. It's one thing, like most partners, they're going to be busy periodically, and it may take them a couple of hours to get back. But if it takes them weeks, that's not really responsive to you. You want to believe that you are their only priority. It's a key part of the relationship. You may not be, and it's worth understanding that you may not always be their top priority, but you should always feel in every interaction that you are. Some bonus characteristics to look for. Can they anticipate what you need? A good third-party partner, primary or secondary, however they're working, is always trying to understand what it is that you need next from your CI partner and suggesting ways that you can get it. Suggesting actions based upon what they've seen and how the market is going. A true partner is not waiting for the phone to ring and you telling them what you want them to do, and is not just throwing reports out to you on a regular basis. They're responding to your needs, they're interacting with you, they're making suggestions about what can be done. They have the flexibility to adjust the scope on the fly as need be, because you may find out in the middle of a project that the things you thought were driving the competitive action are not the drivers, there's something else, and you need to change the scope. A good partner will allow that to happen, will adjust the scope and continue working for you. Final one, compatibility. Is this a company? Is the relationship manager someone you want to work with? Someone you want to engage with? Way back when in the old days, in the consulting world, one of the ways to evaluate a potential employee was to ask a person a simple question. If you had to spend 6 hours on a transatlantic flight with them in the seat next to you, would it be a good flight? It's a nice way to do a personality check. Are they the kind of person you can hang out with? It does reinforce that you're going to get people who are like yourself as opposed to being a little bit different. But that is a test of compatibility. So when you think about your partner, and ideally when you're looking at a third-party partner, you are looking at a long-term relationship with this company and with the salesperson. So you have to be able to work with them. If you're not comfortable with them, it might be a good idea to move on. A couple of things to look at on the third-party partner. First one is on creativity. How much creativity do you want them to express for you? There are some activities, multiple variant activities, things that are future-looking, things that have very difficult sources of information that require a complex data collection tool, things that have multivariate analysis that require special analytical capabilities, things that require a little more primary research, that require from your partner a degree of creativity. They can't do what's rote, because what's rote may not work for this, and you need someone who has got the flexibility and creativity to come up with different ways to get the answer you're looking for. Routine stuff and rote stuff, creativity helps, makes for a really beautiful presentation of the data. It can also help to provide that there is no disruption to your service from them if they have a reason to go around it. But you don't want too much creativity here. You don't want someone to be changing the format of your newsletter every 3 weeks because they thought they found a better way to do it. Routine monitoring, secondary monitoring, these are very process-oriented functions. You want creativity at the start to set up the routine in the process, but once it's in place and rolling, You really just want to make sure that routine gets done and the data gets collected appropriately and analyzed appropriately and delivered appropriately without any hiccups along the way. Less experimentation, more activity and delivery. So consider how creative you want your partner to be. Too creative can be bad. Not creative enough can also be bad. They've got to have the capacity to meet your needs. So do they have enough staff? Do they have the technology that's going to do it? They may have staff that's sufficient to meet sort of those routine day-to-day activities, but if you add anything onto it, they may not be able to address it because their staff may be overloaded, or they may not have extra staff to deliver. So be considerate of that. Does this company have that? Be aware you're not likely to be the only client. To rephrase that, they're likely to have multiple clients. So it's important to understand the balance between the staff they have and how they're allocated across clients to make sure that you're getting what you need from that staff. Subject matter expertise may not be evenly distributed amongst the staff that's out there. Recognize that some companies will have new employees coming in. It's part of the process of how companies grow. And there may be learning curves. It's great. It's a good thing to have that. The question is, how do they manage that learning curve? And at what point does that new employee get introduced to you? And how well versed are they at that time? Understand their staffing models. Is it an in-house staff, the W-2 employees, or is it contractors, the 1099 employees? Is it some combination of the two? How comfortable are you with that combination? And of course, there's that surge capacity. You may be using them for a regular monthly cadence type report, and then something happens in the industry that requires a special project. Do they have the ability to jump, put more resources on it, and get that problem or that question answered for you? That's an important consideration, because if they don't have that resource and that capability, you may be stuck, unable to answer a key question from your executives. Third parties tend to have three main models of how their business is. First one is one where you have a lot of in-house project managers. These are the W-2 employees of the company who are managing the 1099 subject matter expert contractors. This is a very good process because it allows that company to bring in a select group of people for your need, who then move on to something else, other projects. Disadvantage is that subject matter expert who worked on you on the project last month may not be available for the project next month because they've got other contracts and conflicts. The in-house project, very analyst-centric, has in-house project managers and in-house analysts. That's a W-2 type organization where everybody is fully employed. Disadvantage of that, there may not be some subject matter expertise in that internal group, so they may have to either learn on the fly or draw upon outside resources to get there. Advantage of that, the person who did the work for you last year is still on the company this year. The knowledge that was gained on that last project can be applied to the next project. So the institutional knowledge is deeper and broader. The hybrid model uses in-house analysts and contracts out to SMEs. The advantage of this one is that you have the combination of institutional knowledge and longevity with the specific expertise that is sometimes needed to complete a project. Understand what these models are and evaluate how they fit with your needs, and make sure that the partner you pick has the right model for you. Match communication styles. Now, you want to make sure that if you are in a structured organization where all communication is formal, it's done by email, it's backed up with duplicates, and everybody is properly copied on that email, you want your partner to follow that process for you. If it's all scheduled, we have a meeting every Thursday at 10 o'clock, does your partner's structure and communication style follow that? Or are they a little more ad hoc and just want to go on, move things? If you're based on milestones, do they use milestones as well? Or are they more, job's due in 10 weeks, we're going to get it all done to you in 10 weeks, and you'll find out at the end what's going to happen. Also, the presentation itself. Do you need it to be delivered format ready to go in your company's format, ready for you to deliver directly to your executive leadership? Or do you want more of a data dump that's got all the data and you're going to sort through it, and maybe some comprehensive list of what we did? They did these steps and here's how it came out. Do you want somewhere in between? Communication style you're used to for internal or that works for you as the receiver of the information is the one that should guide what you want from your partner. If their communication style doesn't match yours, it's a recipe for dissatisfaction throughout the relationship and ultimately something that won't help you have a successful third-party relationship going forward. Remember that all business is at some level personal. Their culture has a significant impact on how you will work with them. The relationship structure of their company affects how you will relate to the team that's working to support you. That adds impact or changes or steps in the process that may or may not help you. And they may need to depend on you a little more than you want. They should depend on you for certain things. Ideally, they view you as a partner and you are as important to them as they are to you. In fact, sometimes they should be looking at you as more important to them than they are to you, rather. So you want to be first in their mind, even if they're not always first in yours. But there are direct manifestations of this culture. Very hierarchical organizations, strict formal reporting structures, they're going to change how they give you information. And that may or not be in a way that you want. If it's a very flat organization, the depth of resources to support your needs may not be there. Take those into consideration and finally look at attitude. If the company delivers serious work and does great jobs, great deliverables, but the attitude throughout is sort of fun and we're not really taking this as anything more than a lark, that may not fit. You may want someone who looks at the work that's being done for you as very serious and as important to you as it is to anybody else. And you want them to recognize that importance. So do you want it to be a freewheeling, fun kind of relationship or a formal, structured relationship? The culture will drive all of that. And the culture that works for, say, a facilitator to support with scenario planning may be very different than the culture that works for ongoing secondary monitoring. Recognize that, identify the cultures that work best for you, and you'll have a happier relationship throughout. Communication styles, as I mentioned, we want to match that up. I think I went in the wrong direction here, didn't I? Yes, I did. So when you want to bring them in, first thing to keep in mind, the third party is not part of your company. So they don't get to the inner circle. They are a support service. They may be great friends. They may be nice to talk to. They may be an important consideration of what you're doing, but their role is to augment what you do. It is not to be a part of your structure in the same sense. Tell them what they need to know, but not everything. They provide advice. They provide information. But at the end of the day, keep in mind, the job that's on the line is yours, not theirs. So you want to keep this in such a way that your job is always protected from it. They need to know what is the issue they've been asked to solve. They need to know how it's going to be used. What is the purpose of getting this information? What are you going to do with it? And they need to know due dates, deliverables, and acceptable. They really don't need to know all about your organization. They don't need to know how many people are in this department or that department or where it comes through. They don't need to know what your serious plans are or your strategy is for the next future, 6 months, 10 months, or a year out. They need to know enough to get the information done. So don't share all the confidential information, just enough. Ideally, they are a friendly, professional partner working with you who knows what they need to know to get the job done and doesn't know more than that at the time. An effective way to manage that is to compartmentalize. There's a lot of information you know. There's a lot of information they know. And then there's information that you have to share between the two of you. Treat them as a junior partner on your team. They only need to know what they need to know, nothing more. Let them know about the outcomes. That's one of the more important things of a long-term relationship. Who is my partner? What do they know? What was the result of this? Let them be aware that their information, what they've done for you, has had an impact on it. Levels of compartmentalization will vary. If you're going to be working with the senior executives on a scenario planning or strategic planning exercise, they're going to have a lot of access to key information. If they're going to be doing secondary data scraping, they really don't need to know very much. Make sure that the level of compartmentalization you give, what you make available to them, fits the assignment. And on a side note, if they are a good partner who delivers good work, share it. Let your peers know this is someone you can trust. That's helpful for them, and it's helpful for you. Finally, in the communication, a good third-party partner won't hide bad news from you. They'll share the good news all the time. Everybody does that, but they will also let you know when things are not going right. They also, if they're a good partner, won't throw the deck to favor one side of the argument over another. They will tell you what they've heard, what they've seen, and they will share that with you appropriately. A bad partner will customize the results to fit what you wanted it to say, whether that's the right answer or not. A good partner will tell you that this was not the right answer. Here is the right answer, and it may not be what you want. As a CI unit, you can feather bad information, but one of your jobs is to tell the truth, to give the information as it is, to give your recommendations. Let people know what you found, even if it's bad, because it is always better to have bad news delivered early when you can do something about it than late when you can't. And your partner should also take that same attitude around that. So I'm going to run through the next couple of slides very quickly because I think I've gone too long. 3 things to consider: how you work together. How you work together is based on trust. Do you trust them to deliver good information? Respect. Are they the kind of organization you respect for their position, for their opinions, for what they know? Are they open? Do they tell you where they're getting from? Will they share insights with you into how they get information? Will they alert you to any changes or delays? Are they acting as a part of your organization that's telling you what you need to know, when you need to know it, even if it's unpleasant? A good partner will earn your trust, will get your respect by their openness, and will be engaged with you for the long haul. There are lots of providers out there for any service you want. Differentiation is really not about skill and expertise. I can say that most of my competitors in my segment of the industry are very good at what they do. They have a slightly different process than we do, but the results are good. So it's not really the skill set, it's how they operate, and it's the outcomes that that different form of operation comes up. So select based on the outcome you want more than anything else, and based on the personality. Can you work with them? Secondary data providers pretty much all offer that use the same databases. So what you're looking at is the skill and how they deliver that product. How good are they at taking lots and lots of data sources and filtering it down to the narrow one? Differentiation, as I said, comes from those 4 C's: the creativity, the capacity, the competence, and the culture. Those need to match your requirements from a partner. They need to have the levels of creativity, competence, capacity, and culture that fits what you are looking for from that provider. 2 last slides. First one is you need spare capacity. An orchestra doesn't have a single violinist. It has 7 or 8. It doesn't have a single drums. It has 8 or 2 or 3 percussionists. You need that from your partnership as well. Relying on a single partner for each of your services is not a good idea. I know it sounds counterintuitive that I'm saying that, but that is the case. Partner with different third-party partners. Find ones who work together. You're creating essentially a CI orchestra. You need people who do secondary, who do primary, who do trade shows, who do scenario planning and wargaming, who do data interviewing, all of those different tool sets. Have multiple partners for each one of those. Do not rely on a single partner for any one service. Have several of them out there. And don't be afraid to try other partners out. You may be very happy with the ones you have. That's great. You have a good relationship with them. Every now and again, it's a good idea. Test the waters. Over and over again, when we look at win-loss, we see the number one reasons companies go out to bid isn't because they're unhappy. It's because it's time to go out for bid, because every 2 or 3 years, they think we should try, see if there's something else out there. That's the same process with CI. Keep the ones that work. But remember, this is a business. It's not a friendship. You may be friendly, you may get along really well, but your business is first. And as I said much earlier, your job is the job that's on the line, not theirs. You need to protect your job, and having multiple partners allows you to put together the orchestra of competitive intelligence that meets all of your needs appropriately. In the end, who you're going to pick, personal preference and experience. Have high ethical considerations at all times. Consider that old question, the HR question I mentioned earlier. If you're on a 6-hour flight with my account manager, am I going to be comfortable? Is it going to be a nice thing to have? If you don't like the client manager, it's unlikely that the research and the relationship is going to be good. If it's not working, be open. Tell what's not working. Give the partner a chance to fix it. If they can't fix it, find another one. If it's working well, let other people in your company know about this resource, and feel free to address and bring them on board. So as conclusion, an effective CI unit focuses on its highest and best use. Anything else should be outsourced to a third party. The third party you bring in should be brought in to do what they are best at, their highest and best use. Match that to your 4 Cs. Multiple partners gives you a diversity of insights, inputs, and sources, and allows you to create that orchestration of competitive intelligence so that what you're delivering is what your clients want, when they want, and how they need it. Make sure your partners can work with you in the long term. You're in the business for a long run, your partner should be in there as well. And if you have a partner that works with you, that is capable of growing with you, that becomes more and more integrated with your team, you've got a home run. Try and keep that partner, keep them working with you, but don't be afraid. Every now and again, try another partner. See if they can add to your orchestra or not. I ran through those last ones fairly quickly, and I'm sure there's lots of questions. But Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you. I do have time to go long if the audience wants to.
Okay, well, we do have one question, and if I'm answering it incorrect, if I'm asking it incorrectly, I'm actually going to open up your microphone. It has to do with the something that you said about choosing someone that you can hang out with. Can you say more about that? It seems that certain demographics are going to find themselves disproportionately left out. Why is that important if someone can get the job done for you? Would you say that is discriminatory in any way?
I think that's an excellent question. First,
I hope I did it justice.
Yeah, I'm going to say anyone who selects a partner based upon the physical characteristics of that business partner is shutting themselves out of a lot of expertise that they should have. You should be picking someone who has the competence, the capacity, the culture, and the way of working and the cost structure that you need, regardless of the physical characteristics of that individual, race, sex, religion, any of those things. You should be able to get along with this person. They may not always be someone you want to go out and have a drink with after work. It's great if that is, but I don't want to sound, I don't know, PC or whatever it is, but shame on you if you're not willing to talk to someone who's got good information and is going to make things work for you. And I feel sorry for the company that says I'm not going to work with the best person because they don't match my expectations of personal characteristics, race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, or any of those things. That's you're in business to do what's best for your company. Sometimes you might get out of your comfort zone. Now, if the person has the personality that you hate, I'm not talking about physical characteristics, I'm talking about personality, meaning they're abrasive, they're racist, they're sexist, whatever you want it to be, then I don't care how good they are. They're not worth having on your team. So based on whether they're good on your team, and if you're using those characteristics, that's just, if you're a good person, you're a good person. I don't know if that answers it in the way that expresses what I'm trying to say, but a company that doesn't select somebody because of anything other than their capacity and capability to do the work and be pleasant to work with is making a mistake. If they're bad to work with, no matter, even if they look exactly like you and they're pain in the tuchus, to use the more appropriate word, don't work with them. There's lots of other people you can work with.
Okay. I hope that answered your question. And actually, we are at time, and that was actually the longest question, actually the only question we got. If you have questions for Erik, and you'd like for him to perhaps go into detail with you a little more about, because we covered a lot of really important things, a lot of information in this webinar, Erik. Thank you. His contact information is right there on the screen, and of course, you can always reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to facilitate an introduction. Erik, I want to thank you so much for presenting this morning, and we will be actually presenting together again in a couple of weeks. So I hope everyone can join us for that. Erik, thank you. Everyone else, have a great day.
Thank you, Michelle. It was my pleasure, and I do look forward to talking to everyone in 2 weeks.
Yep. Take care, everybody. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.